Picture an early human tens of thousands of years ago, bedding down for the night in open country. No walls, no locked door, no fire built high enough to hold back the dark for long. Just a body lying still on bare ground, unaware of what might be moving through the grass nearby. Somewhere out there, a pack of ancient wolves is testing the wind. A cave bear is working its way along a riverbank. A saber-toothed cat is easing down from the rocks above without a sound. Every one of them could have ended that person's life in seconds. And yet, generation after generation of early humans slept in the open, in caves, in tall grass thick with predators, and mostly walked away from it. Why? The real explanation has almost nothing to do with any weapon our ancestors carried and everything to do with how a predator's brain decides what's worth attacking. It comes down to scent, pattern recognition, and an ancient cost-benefit calculation running quietly behind the eyes of every animal that ever considered a sleeping human a possible meal. One far more sophisticated than most people give a wild predator credit for. Start with a correction, because most people picture Ice Age predators wrong. A wild predator wasn't sitting around waiting to pounce on the first human that crossed its path. Every ancient wolf, cave lion, and short-faced bear was constantly running a background filter, danger against payoff, before committing to anything. Getting hurt in the Pleistocene wasn't a minor setback. A wolf with a torn paw couldn't keep pace with a fleeing deer. An injured predator got no recovery period, no rest, no guaranteed meals while it mended. It slowly starved while healthier competitors ate first. So these animals weren't reckless and they weren't fearless. They were extremely conservative decision makers, forever weighing a meal against the real possibility of a career-ending injury. Natural selection had spent an enormous stretch of time punishing impulsiveness and rewarding hesitation. And a sleeping human, against every instinct you might expect, frequently failed to clear the bar as a reasonable target at all. Reason one comes down to scent, and it's stranger than most people assume. Early humans carried an odor profile that made no sense to a wild nervous system. Wood smoke clinging to skin, animal fat used to treat leather, herbs rubbed into wounds, sweat mixed with ash from a dozen different camps, all of it blended into something no predator had a category for. To a creature that sorted every smell into safe or unsafe, an unreadable smell defaulted straight to unsafe. The same way an unexplained noise in your own house at night puts your nervous system on alert before you know what caused it. Evolution rewards extreme caution around anything unfamiliar, because the animals that hesitated lived longer than the ones that investigated first. Even large, confident predators would often swing wide around an early human camp for no reason beyond the smell alone screaming that something was wrong. An animal approaching to a certain distance, pausing, lifting its head to read the air, then simply turning back the way it came without ever entering the camp. A quiet decision made entirely through the nose, long before the sleeping humans inside ever knew a decision was being made a few dozen feet away. Reason two is a pattern researchers call neophobia, an automatic wariness toward anything the brain can't classify. Predators hunted using a mental template built from watching how real prey behaved. Ears twitching, eyes darting, sudden zigzags, a freeze, then a sprint. An early human curled motionless by the embers of a dying fire matched none of that. It didn't move like something fleeing, and it didn't move like something grazing. To a predator's threat recognition system, that unfamiliar shape read as a possible hazard rather than an opportunity, since anything that wouldn't behave predictably might also fight back unpredictably. The very stillness that would have made an exposed human feel vulnerable was, from the animal side, exactly what kept it from ever committing. Compare that to a startled antelope, which explodes into a dead sprint within a fraction of a second. The explosive, predictable burst of motion a predator's nervous system has spent its life learning to recognize. A silent, unmoving shape wrapped in hide offers none of that. An animal that can't classify what it's looking at almost always defaults to caution. In modern studies, biologists place a completely novel object in front of wildlife and time how long different species take to approach, if at all. Hesitation stretching from minutes into hours. Animals circling at a distance, often abandoning the area rather than risk it. A sleeping human, unusual in scent and shape alike, checked nearly every box that triggers exactly that kind of hesitation. Reason 3 sits even deeper. Predators built their hunting instincts around animals that fled the instant danger appeared. Motion away equals food. Early humans consistently failed to deliver that signal. Startle a sleeping person and they rarely bolt like a deer. They shout, swing a branch, throw stones, or simply stand upright and suddenly look twice as large as they did lying down. That erratic, aggressive response was exactly the kind of behavior a predator's instincts had learned to treat as a red flag rather than an invitation. Across countless encounters over tens of thousands of years, predators that tried their luck against early humans generally paid for it. A fractured skull from a well-thrown rock, a spear wound that never fully healed. And that expensive lesson got folded into instinctive caution, passed down generation after generation. Humans also rarely traveled alone, and a band of allies willing to fight back collectively was a far more intimidating prospect than any single animal. Young predators likely inherited a share of this caution simply by watching how adults in their group reacted around people, long before testing the boundary themselves. Now here's where the math gets genuinely interesting. Wild predators operated under a strict energy budget, and every hunt withdrew from that account, whether it succeeded or not. A cheetah completes roughly half its full-speed chases, and is often too winded afterward to defend the kill. A leopard frequently needs 10 or more stalking attempts before one pays off. Even efficient pack hunters like ancient wolves burned enormous energy chasing prey across open ground, leaving no room to waste effort on a target as uncertain as a motionless human. Every failed attempt burned calories the animal couldn't easily replace. So when a predator scanned the landscape, it was weighing maximum payoff against minimum risk and cost, and a sleeping human cleared none of those bars convincingly. Little meat reward next to a deer or wild horse. High injury risk from an unpredictable response. Confusing scent, unreadable behavior. With a poor expected return on every axis, there was almost always an easier, safer option elsewhere. A rodent burrow, a weakened yearling trailing its herd, leftovers from another kill. Wildlife behaviorists call this opportunity cost, a concept borrowed from economics that maps with surprising precision onto an animal deciding where to spend its limited energy each night. Under nearly any realistic Pleistocene scenario, a sleeping human lost that comparison badly. None of this means predators never killed sleeping humans. It occasionally happened, and understanding the pattern behind those rare cases reinforces everything above rather than contradicting it. The incidents that did occur likely sorted into three categories. The first, animals already injured, aged, or otherwise unable to catch normal prey, for whom a slow target suddenly became worth a risk they'd ordinarily avoid, because the alternative was slow starvation with nothing left to lose. The second, animals that had learned through discarded carcasses or careless camps that human presence sometimes meant an easy meal. Once that wariness eroded, the whole calculation shifted. The third, animals that felt cornered, were startled at close range, or were guarding young, fundamentally defensive rather than predatory, like a mother cave bear reacting to a perceived threat rather than hunting. A large share of these rare incidents likely fell into one of those three buckets, which is exactly why entire bands of early humans could sleep exposed night after night, generation after generation, and mostly wake up never knowing how close or how uninterested any of those animals actually were. What likely stood out most is how hard wild predators worked to stay away from early human camps entirely. The same avoidance patterns researchers document in wildlife today. Coyotes tracked through modern cities steadily shift their activity deeper into the night in high traffic areas, essentially rescheduling their lives around avoiding contact. GPS collared grizzlies cluster their movement near trails almost exclusively after dark. Some bears bed down within a short distance of a busy trailhead, staying motionless until traffic clears. That same instinct almost certainly shaped how ancient predators treated ancient camps. Restraint and a strong preference for staying invisible over almost anything else on the agenda, including their own hunger in the moment. There's a stranger twist buried in this same dynamic, something ecologists today call the human shield effect. Prey species deliberately moving closer to human activity rather than fleeing from it, because the danger of an occasional human is nothing compared to the danger of a hungry predator. It's not hard to imagine ancient herds doing something similar near a cluster of human hearths. Early humans, without ever intending to, may have reshaped the behavior of animals around them simply by being present, and simply by smelling the way they smelled. So why does the fear still feel so real today, long after fire, walls, and locked doors made nightfall genuinely safe? Because the part of your brain generating it was shaped by an environment where the danger was real for an almost unimaginable stretch of time. 100,000 years and more of ancestors sleeping exposed on open ground. The nervous systems that reacted strongly to that danger were the ones that kept producing offspring, and that reaction never got the memo that circumstances changed. It isn't irrational. It's outdated software still running because it once worked extremely well for an extremely long time. You can know every fact in this piece and still feel your pulse climb the moment a stick snaps somewhere past the tree line. That gap between what you know and what you feel isn't a flaw in your reasoning. It's proof that the emotional wiring involved is far older than the reasoning wiring sitting on top of it, built over hundreds of thousands of years of ancestors who slept exposed and mostly survived it. The older system doesn't update itself just because the newer one has better information. Here's the honest picture underneath it all. For nearly the entire span of human existence, nothing was circling the camp, waiting for everyone to drift off. The wolves passed through and kept walking. The cave bear caught the scent of smoke and old fat from 100 yards out and quietly changed direction. The big cat up in the rocks watched the darkness settle over the camp and simply lost interest, moving on to check a game trail instead, the way it did most nights, the way predators had done for as long as their kind shared a landscape with ours. Our ancestors were considerably safer stretched out by that fire than their instincts were telling them, not because predators were harmless, but because a sleeping human was never quite the opportunity a predator was actually looking for. Hundreds of generations of animals before this one already ran the same calculation it would take a lifetime to work out consciously, and they passed the answer down as instinct rather than instruction. None of that required a single predator to ever like us, trust us, or think of us as anything other than an unnecessary risk. It only required enough of them to be cautious enough, often enough, for that caution to become the rule rather than the exception. And somewhere across those hundreds of thousands of years, across an almost unimaginable number of nights spent asleep in the open, Our species simply stopped registering as worth the gamble.